Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I stood frozen at my sister Amanda's corporate promotion party as she clinked her champagne glass and smirked. While I celebrate my promotion, my little brother Horace got fired again, third time in 2 years. Maybe stick to stripping? Our dad chuckled beside her, adding, "At least he's good at that." The crowd erupted in laughter, unaware of the app I'd secretly completed or the job interview I'd aced last week. Their laughter stopped abruptly when the CEO walked in, his eyes locking directly on me. I recognized him immediately. Jackson Taylor had interviewed me 3 days ago. The silence was deafening as Jackson Taylor, CEO of Meridian Healthcare Solutions, stood at the entrance scanning the room. His eyes remained fixed on me, recognition clearly visible on his face. Amanda, oblivious to what was happening, continued greeting guests with the confident smile she always wore, the same smile that had won her favor with our father since childhood. I took a sip of my drink, trying to calm the storm inside me. My relationship with my sister had always been complicated. 4 years older than me, Amanda had set an impossible standard growing up. Straight as, captain of the debate team, and always our father's pride and joy. Frank Davis, construction company owner and self-made businessman, had never understood my interest in coding and technology. He wanted his son to build things you could touch, not waste time playing with computers. My mother Linda had been different. She understood my passion, my vision. When I was 12, she used her savings to buy me my first proper computer. Some people build with their hands, others with their minds, she'd told me while Frank shook his head in disapproval. She was the buffer between my father's harsh judgment and my sensitive nature. But cancer took her 2 years ago, leaving a void that seemed to amplify every criticism from the remaining family members. The last 2 years had been particularly difficult. 3 jobs, 3 terminations. What my family didn't know was that each termination had been for reasons I couldn't regret. At Wilson Tech, I refused to implement features that would harvest user data without consent. At Grayson Dynamics, I reported security flaws that the management wanted to hide from clients. And at my most recent position with TechStart, I stood my ground when asked to cut corners on security testing that could potentially expose users to identity theft. Each time, my father saw only failure. "Another one bites the dust," he'd say whenever I lost a job. Amanda would chime in with career advice that always felt more like gloating than actual help. Meanwhile, Amanda had risen through the ranks at various companies, eventually landing at Meridian Healthcare Solutions, one of the biggest healthcare technology firms in the country. Her methods weren't always ethical from what I'd observed. She'd take credit for team projects, strategically align herself with higher-ups, and occasionally throw colleagues under the bus. But she got results, and in our father's eyes, results were all that mattered. Despite knowing how they'd treat me, I decided to attend her promotion party tonight. Partly because a small part of me still hoped for their approval, but mostly because I'd finally completed my passion project 2 days ago. After 18 months of work, my healthcare accessibility app was finished, patent pending. It would revolutionize how underserved communities could access medical care, using an algorithm that matched patients with affordable providers based on sliding scale fees, transportation limitations, and medical specialties. I was planning to announce my achievement tonight, hoping that maybe, just maybe, my family would finally see my worth. But Amanda's toast had crushed that plan before I could even try. And now, as if the universe was playing some cosmic joke, Jackson Taylor was walking directly toward me. The same Jackson Taylor who had interviewed me 3 days ago for a senior developer position that would change my life. The same Jackson Taylor who had seemed genuinely impressed with my ideas during that interview. And apparently, the same Jackson Taylor who was my sister's boss. She had never mentioned she worked directly under the CEO. And I certainly hadn't connected Meridian Healthcare, where she worked, with Meridian Solutions, the division that had interviewed me. The realization struck like lightning. This wasn't a coincidence. She had known about my interview. This whole party, the timing of her cruel toast about my employment status, suddenly felt calculated in a way that made my stomach turn. Jackson was only a few steps away now. I straightened my posture, wondering if the job opportunity I'd been so excited about had just evaporated in a champagne toast and a round of humiliating laughter. "Horace Davis," Jackson said, extending his hand. "I didn't expect to see you here." Before I could respond, Amanda materialized beside us, her smile tight with confusion. "You two know each other?" she asked, looking between us. Jackson nodded. "We had a rather impressive meeting earlier this week. Mr. Davis has some fascinating ideas about healthcare technology." Amanda's perfectly composed face faltered for just a moment. "My brother? Are you sure we're talking about the same person?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Yes, quite sure," Jackson replied, his expression unreadable. "Horace, I'd like to speak with you privately at some point this evening. For now, please enjoy the party." As Jackson moved away to greet other guests, Amanda's smile disappeared entirely. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "What the hell was that about?" she hissed. "How do you know my boss?" "I interviewed with Meridian this week," I said, keeping my voice level. "You never mentioned you worked directly under the CEO." "Because it wasn't relevant to you," she snapped. "What did you tell him? What fascinating ideas was he talking about?" Before I could answer, our father approached, champagne in hand and pride written across his face. "There's my girl, the youngest VP in company history." He embraced Amanda, then turned to me with considerably less enthusiasm. "Still here, son? Thought you might have slipped out after that toast. Truth hurts, doesn't it?" "Frank," I said, using his first name, which I knew irritated him. "Jackson Taylor just mentioned he was impressed with my ideas during our interview this week." He scoffed. "Interview? For what? Another job you'll lose in 6 months?" "Senior developer position," I replied. "Project lead potential." Frank laughed. "You? Leading a project? Let's hope they do better background checks than the last 3 companies." He turned to Amanda. "Your brother has become an expert at interviewing. It's the keeping jobs part he struggles with." Amanda smiled, clearly relieved by the shift back to familiar territory. "Speaking of which," she said loudly enough for nearby colleagues to hear, "remember when Horace tried to start his own app company after college? What was it called again?" "Future Tech," I muttered, feeling the sting of a particularly painful memory. My first entrepreneurial attempt had failed when an investor pulled out at the last minute. "Right, Future Tech," she continued, which lasted approximately 3 months before bankruptcy. Dad had to bail him out of his apartment lease. A small crowd had gathered around us now, listening to Amanda's stories with amused interest. She was in her element, commanding attention while systematically dismantling my dignity. She moved on to college stories, twisting my academic achievements into tales of social awkwardness and professional incompetence. And then there was the time Horace created a program for his computer science final that crashed the entire university system, she said. The part she conveniently left out was that the program had been so innovative that the outdated university servers couldn't handle it, and my professor had actually given me extra credit for pushing boundaries. Our father joined in, sharing childhood stories that had been rewritten over the years to fit the narrative of Amanda as the star and me as the perpetual disappointment. With each story, with each laugh from the audience, I felt myself shrinking. I excused myself to get another drink, desperately needing space. As I stood at the bar, I overheard 2 Meridian executives talking nearby. "She's impressive," one said, coming up with that healthcare algorithm. "Taylor's been looking for something like that for years." "Game changer for the company," the other replied. "No wonder she got promoted so quickly." I froze. Healthcare algorithm? My mind raced back to the project I'd been working on for 18 months, the same project I'd occasionally discussed with Amanda when she'd feigned interest in my work. My thoughts were interrupted when Jackson Taylor appeared beside me. "Mr. Davis," he said quietly, "I'd like that private word now." He led me to a small office off the main reception area. Once inside, he closed the door, and his formal demeanor shifted slightly. "This is an unexpected situation," he began. "When you interviewed with me, you didn't mention your sister worked for Meridian." "I didn't know I was interviewing with the same company," I admitted. "She works for Meridian Healthcare Solutions. I interviewed with Meridian Technology Solutions. I didn't realize they were divisions of the same company." Jackson nodded. "They operate somewhat independently, but yes, same parent company. I oversee both divisions." He paused. "Your interview was exceptional, Horace. Your ethical stance regarding data privacy and your innovative thinking about accessibility technology is exactly what we need." A surge of hope rose in my chest, only to be immediately tempered by his next words. However, after witnessing the family dynamics tonight, I have concerns about workplace environment. Amanda would effectively be part of senior leadership while you would be joining as new talent, albeit in a different division. My heart sank. This was exactly what I had feared. I'm not withdrawing the opportunity, he clarified, seeing my expression. But I need to be certain this wouldn't create problems within the company. Mr. Taylor, I said, choosing my words carefully, my professional ethics have never been compromised by personal relationships, and they never will be. My sister and I have our differences, but I can assure you they wouldn't affect my work. He studied me for a long moment. Call my office tomorrow. We'll discuss the details further and figure this out. He handed me his business card with a direct line written on the back. I meant what I said, Horace. You have exceptional talent. As we returned to the party, I felt conflicted. The job opportunity wasn't completely lost, but it was hanging by a thread, and there was still the nagging question about what those executives had been discussing. A healthcare algorithm that sounded suspiciously like my own project. Amanda spotted us as we re-entered the reception hall, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. I noticed Jackson watching our interaction carefully, as if assessing exactly what he'd just walked into by considering hiring both siblings. What was supposed to be a night where I finally shared my accomplishment had turned into a minefield of humiliation and suspicion, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something much worse was happening beneath the surface. The rest of the evening felt like walking through quicksand. Every smile, every conversation was an effort as my mind raced between the job opportunity with Jackson and the disturbing comment I'd overheard about Amanda's healthcare algorithm. I needed more information. I retreated to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pulled out my phone. Accessing my cloud storage, I navigated to the folder containing my healthcare app project. Everything appeared normal at first glance, but when I checked the access logs, my blood ran cold. There had been multiple logins from an unfamiliar IP address over the past 3 months. Someone had accessed my development notes, algorithm specifications, and user interface designs. The most recent access was just 2 weeks ago, precisely when Amanda had called to check in on me and casually asked how my project was going. I scrolled through my email, finding the exchange with the patent lawyer. The provisional patent had been filed last week, which meant I had some legal protection, but not enough if someone had already taken my work. My hands trembled as the pieces fell into place. When I returned to the reception, I scanned the room for Amanda. She was across the hall, engaged in animated conversation with a group of executives. Jackson stood nearby, occasionally glancing in my direction. Taking a deep breath, I made my way toward my sister. Amanda, can I speak with you privately for a moment? I kept my voice calm despite the storm inside me. She gave the executives an apologetic smile. My brother needs some career advice. I'll just be a minute. We stepped into a quiet corner, and I wasted no time. You accessed my cloud storage and took my healthcare app design, didn't you? Her smile didn't waver. What are you talking about? The healthcare algorithm everyone's congratulating you for. It's mine. I have the access log showing someone logged into my accounts from your home IP address. For a brief moment, I saw panic flicker across her face, but she recovered quickly. Horace, you're being paranoid. Great minds think alike, that's all. I've been developing this concept for over a year. 18 months, I corrected. That's how long I've been working on my project, the exact timeline you just claimed. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice hardening. You're just jealous because I've succeeded where you keep failing. Don't embarrass yourself further. I filed a provisional patent last week, I said. I have time-stamped development logs going back to the beginning. If you've stolen my work, there will be evidence. Amanda's expression changed then, from dismissive to threatening. Think very carefully about what you're implying, Horace. Who do you think they'll believe? The newly promoted VP with a spotless record, or the unemployed little brother who can't hold a job for more than 6 months? She leaned closer. Besides, you have no idea what else is at stake here. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Jackson watching our interaction intently. He couldn't hear us, but the tension between us was visibly evident. What do you mean? What else is at stake? I asked. Amanda stepped back, composing herself. Nothing. Just don't throw around accusations you can't back up. Now, I need to get back to my guests. Try not to cause a scene with your paranoid fantasies." As she walked away, I felt a sickening certainty that I was right. But I needed more proof. I discreetly made my way to a laptop set up for a slideshow of company achievements. When no one was looking, I accessed the browser and logged into my email, forwarding the patent application and development logs to myself, then deleted the email from the sent folder and cleared the browser history. Just as I finished, I heard my father's voice. "There you are. What are you doing?" I closed the browser quickly. "Just checking the slideshow." Frank looked skeptical. "Right. Look, Horace, I think you should go home. Amanda's getting uncomfortable with you moping around her celebration. This is her night. Did you know she stole my work?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Frank's expression hardened. "Not this again. You always have some excuse, some conspiracy theory about why you fail while your sister succeeds. When are you going to take responsibility for your own shortcomings?" "This isn't an excuse," I insisted. "She accessed my project files without permission and is presenting my algorithm as her own." "Your algorithm?" He laughed. "The same way you had a revolutionary app idea in college? And another one after graduation? How many failed projects are we up to now?" His dismissal cut deeper than Amanda's theft. He had never believed in me, not once. Even when faced with the possibility that his daughter had stolen my intellectual property, his immediate reaction was to assume I was lying. "I have evidence," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "What you have is jealousy," he replied. "Your sister worked hard for this promotion. She earned it. Instead of trying to tear her down, maybe learn from her example." As he walked away, I remained by the laptop, processing his words. The hurt was familiar, but this time it was mixed with a growing anger. I had spent years accepting their narrative about me, internalizing their judgment. But this time was different. This time, I knew I was right. I looked across the room and saw Jackson engaged in conversation with several board members. Amanda hovered nearby, occasionally glancing nervously in my direction. As if sensing my gaze, Jackson looked up and caught my eye. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, a calculating intensity that made me wonder if he suspected something was amiss. I needed to know exactly what Amanda had presented as her own work. Moving through the crowd, I approached a young woman I'd been introduced to earlier as Amanda's assistant. "Excuse me, Tiffany, right? I was hoping you could help me. My sister mentioned a presentation about her healthcare algorithm, but I missed seeing it. Is there a copy I could look at?" "I'd love to surprise her with some feedback." Tiffany smiled. "Of course. She's so proud of that project. Let me pull it up on my tablet." She retrieved her device from her bag and opened a file. "Here it is." The whole executive team was blown away by the concept. As she handed me the tablet, my worst fears were confirmed. The presentation contained my exact algorithm, my exact user interface designs, even some of my original language from my project notes. The only thing changed was the name, from Health Connect to Meridian Access Care. But the most shocking revelation came on the final slide. The project wasn't just a concept or proposal, it was already in development, with a beta launch scheduled for next month. My stomach dropped as I realized the full extent of the betrayal. Amanda hadn't just stolen my idea, she'd been actively developing it for months while pretending to support my work. Tiffany must have noticed my expression change. "Are you okay?" I handed back the tablet, struggling to keep my composure. "Yes, just impressed." "When did she first present this concept to the executive team?" "About 3 months ago," Tiffany replied. "That's when they fast-tracked her for VP. The promotion tonight is specifically to lead the Access Care project." 3 months ago. Exactly when the first unauthorized access to my cloud storage had occurred. Everything aligned perfectly. As I thanked Tiffany and walked away, I spotted Amanda watching me, her expression a mixture of defiance and warning. Now I understood what she meant by what else is at stake. Her entire promotion, her new position, her reputation within the company, it was all built on stolen work. My work. The realization was overwhelming. I needed air. Heading toward the balcony doors, I bumped into Jackson Taylor again. He steadied me with a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Davis, you look like you've seen a ghost." I met his gaze, wondering how much he knew. "Mr. Taylor, I think we need to have that private conversation sooner rather than later." His expression turned serious. "I believe you're right." Jackson led me to the balcony, away from the noise and eyes of the party. The night air was cool against my face, a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke, just stood side by side looking out at the city lights. "Your sister's presentation 3 months ago," Jackson finally said. "It was remarkable, innovative, exactly what the healthcare industry needs." My heart sank. Did he believe it was her work too? "But," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "it was also surprising. Amanda's background is in marketing and business development. She's excellent at what she does, but she's never shown technical proficiency at that level. The algorithm was sophisticated. Too sophisticated." I turned to look at him, hope flaring in my chest. "You were suspicious?" He nodded slightly. "Let's just say I had questions. When your resume came across my desk last week for the development position, the name caught my attention. I wasn't aware Amanda had a brother in tech. She'd never mentioned it. But when I saw your project portfolio, particularly your work on accessibility systems, I had a hunch. That's why I insisted on interviewing you personally. The pieces were falling into place. You wanted to see if my ideas matched what Amanda had presented. I needed to confirm my suspicions," he acknowledged, "and your interview left little doubt. The way you explained the healthcare accessibility concepts, the passion behind your approach to connecting underserved populations with providers, it was clearly your original thinking." My mind raced back to the interview, remembering how Jackson had asked such specific questions about my approach to healthcare technology, questions that now made perfect sense given this context. "She stole everything," I said, the words burning in my throat. "The algorithm, the interface design, even some of my original documentation language. I have evidence. Access logs showing her IP address in my cloud storage, time-stamped development records going back 18 months, a provisional patent application filed last week." Jackson's expression remained measured. "That's serious, Horace. Corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, these aren't small matters." "I know," I replied, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "But I also know my family. They'll never believe me over Amanda. They never have." As if summoned by our conversation, the balcony door opened, and Amanda stepped out. Her smile faltered when she saw us together. "There you are," she said, her voice artificially cheerful. "Dad's looking for you, Horace. Something about giving you a ride home since it's getting late." "I'm fine, Amanda. Mr. Taylor and I are having a discussion." Her eyes darted between us. "Anything I should be part of as VP of the project?" Jackson's tone remained professional. "Not at this time, Miss Davis. Just getting to know your brother a bit better." Amanda's composure slipped slightly. "Well, don't believe everything he tells you. Horace has always had an overactive imagination and a tendency to exaggerate his accomplishments." The familiar dismissal ignited something in me. Years of diminishment, of having my abilities questioned and my character undermined, crystallized into a moment of clarity and courage. "Like the way you exaggerated your role in creating the Access Care project?" I asked quietly. Amanda's face hardened. "I don't know what you think you know, but this isn't the time or place. I've seen the presentation, Amanda. It's my work. Every algorithm, every interface design, every concept, you stole it all." "Keep your voice down," she hissed, glancing nervously at Jackson. Jackson cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation elsewhere." "There's nothing to discuss," Amanda insisted. "Horace is upset because he can't hold a job, so he's trying to take credit for my success. It's pathetic, really." The balcony door opened again, and our father stepped out. "There you all are. What's going on?" Amanda immediately turned to him. "Dad, Horace is making ridiculous accusations about my project. He's claiming I stole his work." Frank's face darkened as he looked at me. "Again with this?" "We just talked about this, Horace. Your jealousy is becoming a serious problem." "It's not jealousy," I said firmly. "I have evidence. Access logs showing her connecting to my cloud storage, time-stamped development records, a provisional patent application filed before her presentation." Frank waved his hand dismissively. "Anyone can fake computer records. What's next? You'll claim she hacked you? This is exactly why you can't keep a job, Horace. You never take responsibility, always blaming others for your failures." The injustice of his words, the blind support for Amanda regardless of facts, finally broke something in me. "You've never believed in me," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Not once. Mom was the only one who ever saw my potential, who ever thought I could succeed on my own terms. At the mention of my mother, Frank's expression faltered. "Leave your mother out of this." "Why?" "Because she'd be disappointed in how you've treated me? In how you've enabled Amanda to become someone who would steal her own brother's work?" "That's enough," Frank shouted. "You will not disrespect your sister or her accomplishments. She worked hard for this promotion." "No, Dad," I said, my voice now eerily calm. "She stole for this promotion. She hacked my accounts, took my project, and presented it as her own. And she's been sabotaging my career for years." Amanda laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Now you're really being paranoid." "Am I? The timing of my job losses never struck you as odd, Dad. How I'd get positive feedback, be on track for advancement, then suddenly be terminated. Did you ever wonder why?" Frank looked uncomfortable. "You said it was ethical disagreements." "That's what I believed," I admitted. "But tonight Amanda's assistant mentioned something interesting. Apparently, my sister has connections throughout the industry. Connections she's been using to make calls about me to potential employers." Amanda's face paled. "That's a lie." "Is it?" I turned to face her directly. "Because it would explain a lot. How you always seemed to know details about my job situations before I told you. How companies that were eager to hire me suddenly developed concerns about my work history." For the first time that night, Amanda looked genuinely rattled. Her usual confident mask was slipping. Jackson, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "Miss Davis, is there any truth to these allegations?" Before she could answer, Frank intervened. "This is a family matter, Mr. Taylor. I apologize for my son bringing company business into it." "With respect, Mr. Davis," Jackson replied firmly. "If these allegations are true, then it's very much company business. Intellectual property theft is a serious offense." Amanda recovered her composure quickly. "There's no truth to any of this. Horace is upset and lashing out. I developed Access Care myself over the past year. I have documentation to prove it." "Backdated documentation," I countered. "I can prove the timeline of my work, and it predates yours by months." The tension on the balcony was palpable. Frank looked increasingly uncomfortable, glancing between his children with growing uncertainty. For perhaps the first time, a seed of doubt about his perfect daughter seemed to be taking root. "I think that's enough family drama for one evening," Amanda said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Dad, please take Horace home. He's had too much to drink and is embarrassing himself." "I haven't had a single drink," I replied. "And I'm not going anywhere until this is resolved." Jackson stepped forward. "I believe it would be best if we continue this discussion in a more official capacity tomorrow morning. 9 a.m., my office. Both of you." His tone left no room for argument. Amanda forced a smile. "Of course. Though I'm sure once we've all had some rest, this misunderstanding will clear up." As Amanda turned to leave, she whispered to me, "You're making a massive mistake. Even if you could prove anything, which you can't, who do you think the company will keep? The newly promoted VP leading their flagship project, or some random developer they haven't even hired yet?" With that, she returned to the party, our father trailing behind her after giving me one last disappointed look. Only Jackson and I remained on the balcony. "Mr. Taylor," I began, "I know how this looks. Family drama spilling over into professional settings. But I swear to you, I'm telling the truth." Jackson studied me for a long moment. 9 a.m. tomorrow, Mr. Davis. Bring your evidence, all of it." He handed me his card again. "And Horace? Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that integrity matters in the long run. It always does." As he walked away, leaving me alone on the balcony, I felt simultaneously drained and determined. For years, I had allowed my family's perception of me to define my sense of self-worth. Tonight, that ended. Tomorrow, I would stand up not just for my work, but for the truth, and for the first time, I felt ready for the fight. I remained on the balcony long after Jackson left, trying to process everything. The night air had grown colder, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, planning my next steps. If I was going to prove Amanda's theft, I needed to be strategic. Emotional accusations wouldn't be enough against someone as calculated as my sister. When I finally returned to the party, most guests were leaving. Amanda was at the door, accepting congratulations and making plans for lunch dates with executives. Our father stood proudly at her side, the perfect supportive parent. Neither acknowledged me as I passed. The drive home was silent and tense. My apartment felt empty and cold as I entered. But I had work to do. I powered up my computer and began gathering evidence. First, the access logs showing connections from Amanda's IP address to my cloud storage, which I cross-referenced with timestamps on her calendar she'd shared with me months ago. The dates aligned with her working from home days. Next, I pulled up my development repository with its detailed commit history showing the evolution of the project over 18 months. Every algorithm, every interface design, every feature had a clear timeline. I organized it all chronologically, alongside the provisional patent application I'd filed last week. Then I remembered something important, my conversations with Linda, my mother, about the project. Before her death, I'd often discussed my ideas with her, as she'd been my greatest supporter. Searching through my old emails, I found dozens of messages where I'd outlined the concept, shared progress updates, and attached early designs. The emails dated back to the project's inception, providing third-party verification that predated Amanda's supposed creation by over a year. As dawn broke, I had compiled a comprehensive dossier documenting both my work and Amanda's theft. I took a quick shower, changed into a fresh suit, and headed to Meridian headquarters. Arriving 30 minutes early, I found Jackson already in his office. "You're early," he noted, looking up from his computer. "I wanted to make sure I was prepared," I replied, setting my laptop and files on the conference table. Jackson gestured to the seat across from him. "Before Miss Davis arrives, I'd like to see your evidence." For the next 20 minutes, I walked him through everything I'd compiled overnight. He asked detailed questions, particularly about the technical aspects of the algorithm, testing my knowledge of its functioning in ways that would be impossible for someone who hadn't created it. "This is compelling," he said finally. "But Miss Davis will likely have counterarguments." "I know," I acknowledged. "She's always been good at talking her way out of situations." Jackson leaned back in his chair. "Horace, I need to ask you something important. What outcome are you hoping for here?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on proving Amanda's theft that I hadn't fully considered the endgame. "Justice," I replied after a moment. "Recognition that this is my work, and—" I hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. "And I still want that job. I believe in what I've created. I want to see it implemented, to help people who need better access to healthcare." Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "And what about your sister? Are you looking to punish her?" The question was more complicated than it seemed. Amanda had stolen my work, potentially sabotaged my career, and consistently undermined my confidence for years. Part of me wanted retribution, but another part recognized that a public exposure would destroy not just her career, but potentially damage the project itself. "I want accountability," I said finally, "but I also want what's best for the project and the people it could help. If there's a way to achieve both, that's what I want." Something in Jackson's expression shifted slightly, a hint of approval perhaps. "That's a mature perspective." Before we could continue, there was a knock at the door. Amanda entered, looking immaculate in a designer suit, confidence radiating from every pore. She faltered slightly, seeing me already there, but quickly recovered. "Good morning, Mr. Taylor," she said brightly. "I hope we can clear up this unfortunate misunderstanding quickly." Jackson gestured for her to sit. "Miss Davis, your brother has presented some concerning evidence regarding the Access Care project. Before we proceed, I want to be clear that this conversation is being recorded as a potential corporate intellectual property matter." Amanda's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. "Of course. Though I'm confident we'll find this is all a simple coincidence. Great minds often develop similar solutions independently." "Indeed," Jackson replied. "Let's begin with the timeline. When did you first conceptualize Access Care?" Amanda launched into a well-rehearsed explanation about how she'd identified the market need 14 months ago and gradually developed the solution, culminating in her presentation 3 months ago. "That's interesting," Jackson said when she finished, "because I have here," he gestured to my evidence, development records, email exchanges, and cloud storage logs showing that Mr. Horace Davis began work on this exact concept 18 months ago. The algorithm specifications match exactly what you presented as your own work." Amanda's composure wavered slightly. "As I said, coincidence. Healthcare accessibility is a common focus in the industry." "Common focus, perhaps," Jackson agreed. But identical algorithms, interface designs, and even documentation language? That stretches coincidence beyond credibility. He turned his computer monitor toward Amanda, displaying side-by-side comparisons of my original documentation and her presentation. The similarities were undeniable. Furthermore, he continued, we have access logs showing someone using your home IP address accessing Mr. Davis's private cloud storage on multiple occasions, downloading the very files that later appeared in your presentation. Amanda's face paled, but she quickly recovered. Horace must have accessed his files from my home when visiting. He's trying to frame me. The timestamps, I interjected, align perfectly with days you told me you were working from home. Days when I was at my job across town, as my own work records show. For the first time, Amanda looked genuinely flustered. She glanced between Jackson and me, calculating her next move. Even if there are similarities, she said finally, the project is already in development. The company has invested significant resources based on my presentation. Meridian needs this to succeed. I couldn't agree more, Jackson replied. The healthcare accessibility platform is exactly what this company needs to move forward. Which is why I'm offering an alternative to what could become a very public, very damaging intellectual property dispute. Both Amanda and I looked at him with surprise. Mr. Davis, he continued, has expressed concern not just for his own work, but for the integrity of the project and its potential to help people. He's not seeking to disrupt the company's progress. Is that accurate, Horace? I nodded, curious where he was going with this. Here's what I propose, Jackson said. Mr. Davis joins Meridian immediately, as originally discussed in his interview. He takes over technical development of the Access Care platform, given that it's his algorithm and design. Miss Davis remains involved on the business development and marketing side, leveraging her strengths. Amanda started to protest, but Jackson held up his hand. The alternative, he said firmly, is that I take this evidence to the board and legal team today. I think we all know how that would end. The implication was clear. Amanda looked trapped, her usually quick mind visibly struggling to find a way out. You can't do this, she said finally. I've worked too hard to get where I am. You have indeed worked hard, Jackson acknowledged. Your marketing strategies and business development skills are excellent. Those are genuine accomplishments. But this project isn't one of them. The choice is yours, Miss Davis. Collaboration or investigation. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. I watched my sister, seeing beyond her usual mask of confidence to the fear underneath. For all her manipulation and deceit, this was the first time she'd faced real consequences. Fine, she said eventually, her voice tight. But I want it on record that I'm agreeing under duress. Noted, Jackson replied. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to discuss onboarding details with your brother, who will be starting immediately as technical director of the Access Care platform. We'll schedule a full team meeting tomorrow to discuss the path forward. Amanda stood, smoothing her suit with trembling hands. This isn't over, she said quietly as she left, though whether she was speaking to me or Jackson wasn't clear. After she left, Jackson turned to me. That went about as expected. You had this planned all along, I realized. He smiled slightly. Let's just say I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone is taking credit for another's work. Your interview confirmed what I suspected. Today was about giving both of you a way forward that serves the company's interests while respecting the truth. Why not just fire her? I asked, genuinely curious. Several reasons, Jackson replied. First, despite this situation, your sister is talented at what she actually does, marketing and business development. Second, a public exposure and termination would potentially damage the project itself, which is too valuable to risk. And third, he paused. I believe in second chances when they're accompanied by accountability. I considered his words. And if she continues causing problems? Then we revisit the conversation with the board and legal team, he said simply. But for now, let's focus on moving forward. The project needs your expertise, Horace. Are you ready to start today? Despite the emotional whirlwind of the past 24 hours, I felt a clarity and purpose I hadn't experienced in years. Yes, I've been ready for 18 months. Jackson extended his hand. Welcome to Meridian, Technical Director Davis. I think we're going to make something remarkable together. As I shook his hand, I realized something important had shifted. For the first time in my adult life, I was being valued for my actual abilities rather than measured against my sister's manufactured success. It wasn't the vindication I had imagined, but something better, a chance to build something meaningful while reclaiming my own narrative. When I left Jackson's office that day, I walked past Amanda's new corner office. Through the glass walls, I could see her on the phone, gesturing angrily. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I didn't feel hatred or even anger. Instead, I felt something unexpected, a quiet determination to succeed not against her, but despite her. And maybe, eventually, alongside her, if she could learn to do the same. The next morning arrived with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Jackson had scheduled an all-hands meeting for the Access Care team, which included developers, designers, marketing specialists, and senior leadership. As the new technical director, I would be formally introduced, and the project's leadership structure would be clarified. I arrived early, and found the conference room already filling with curious employees. Many glanced my way with undisguised interest. News of my sudden hiring and connection to Amanda had clearly spread. I took a seat near the front, reviewing my notes for the technical overview I would present. The room fell silent as Jackson entered, followed by Amanda. Her usual confident smile was in place, but it didn't reach her eyes. She took a seat across the table, deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. "Good morning, everyone," Jackson began. "Thank you for joining us on short notice. Today marks an important evolution for the Access Care project." He gestured toward me. "I'd like to introduce Horace Davis, who joins us as Technical Director effective immediately. Horace brings exceptional expertise in healthcare accessibility algorithms and will be leading the technical development of the platform." Murmurs spread through the room as people connected the dots between my last name and Amanda's. Jackson continued before speculation could take hold. "Some of you may have noticed the family resemblance. Yes, Horace is Amanda's brother, which makes this situation somewhat unique. However, I want to be clear that his appointment is based solely on technical merit and his extensive work in this exact field." Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat as Jackson pulled up a presentation on the main screen. "Let's review the current state of the project," he said. "As you know, the core of Access Care is its matching algorithm that connects patients with providers based on multiple variables. While the concept was initially presented 3 months ago, we've struggled with the technical implementation." Several developers nodded in agreement, looking relieved that someone was finally acknowledging the difficulties they'd been facing. To address these challenges, I've asked Horace to provide a technical overview of the algorithm's architecture and implementation requirements. Jackson turned to me. "Horace, the floor is yours." As I stood to take Jackson's place at the front of the room, I could feel Amanda's eyes boring into me. I took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. "Thank you, Mr. Taylor," I began, bringing up my detailed technical slides. The Access Care matching algorithm operates on a multivariable optimization framework, balancing patient needs against provider availability, specialization, location, and cost structure. For the next 20 minutes, I explained the intricate details of the system I'd spent 18 months developing. I demonstrated how each component worked together, answered technical questions from the development team, and provided solutions to implementation problems they'd been struggling with for weeks. Throughout my presentation, I noticed the developers exchanging glances of growing respect and relief. They had been trying to implement a complex system without proper technical documentation or guidance, and now finally had clear direction. When I finished, Jackson returned to the front. "Thank you, Horace. As you can all see, bringing in specialized technical leadership will accelerate our timeline significantly." He turned to Amanda. "Miss Davis, would you like to update the team on the marketing and business development aspects?" Amanda rose smoothly, her professional mask firmly in place. "Of course. As Technical Director Davis explained, the platform has significant potential for market disruption. Our initial target demographics include urban, underserved populations, rural communities with limited provider access, and patients with mobility challenges." As she continued outlining the business strategy, I noticed she was using slides and data I'd never seen before. This was genuinely her work, and it was impressive. Her market analysis was thorough, her promotional strategy creative, and her user adoption projections realistic yet ambitious. In her actual field of expertise, Amanda was indeed talented. When the formal presentations concluded, Jackson opened the floor for questions. A senior developer raised his hand first. "This is for Miss Davis," he said. "The technical architecture Horace just explained seems significantly more developed than what was presented in the original concept 3 months ago. Can you explain the evolution of the technical design?" Amanda hesitated, caught between maintaining her facade and acknowledging my role. Before she could respond, Jackson intervened. "That's an excellent observation," he said. "The technical foundation of access care has indeed been in development for much longer than our company has been working on it. Horace has been refining this algorithm for approximately 18 months as an independent project, which is why he's able to provide such detailed implementation guidance." The developer looked confused, but I thought. He glanced at Amanda, then back at Jackson, clearly putting pieces together. Another team member spoke up. "So the original presentation wasn't actually production ready? Because we've been trying to implement based on those specifications for 3 months, and nothing works as described." The room grew increasingly tense as more technical team members began voicing frustrations about the project's unclear direction and impossible specifications. Amanda's composure was visibly cracking under the barrage of technical questions she couldn't answer. Finally, Jackson raised his hand to quiet the room. "I think we need to be transparent here. The initial concept presented by Miss Davis was indeed visionary from a business perspective. However, the technical implementation has required specialized expertise, which is why Horace has joined the team. Moving forward, they will be co-leading the project, each focusing on their areas of strength." It was a diplomatic answer that gave Amanda a graceful exit while acknowledging reality. Some in the room seemed satisfied, but others continued to look skeptical. One of the senior designers spoke next. "I've been working directly with Miss Davis on the user interface designs, but these new technical specifications don't align with what we've been developing. Which version are we moving forward with?" All eyes turned to Amanda, who was now cornered. The discrepancy between what she had instructed the team to build and what I had just presented was too glaring to ignore. "I think," Amanda said carefully, "that we should defer to the technical expertise on this matter. My brother clearly has detailed knowledge of the system architecture." It was as close to an admission as she would make publicly. But the damage was done. The team could see the truth. She had presented technical specifications she didn't understand and couldn't implement. As the meeting continued, the power dynamic shifted visibly. Technical questions were directed to me, while business and marketing queries went to Amanda. By the time Jackson concluded the session, a new order had been established without any explicit accusations being made. "Let's reconvene tomorrow with updated project plans reflecting our new leadership structure," Jackson said. "Horace, Amanda, please stay behind for a moment." As the room emptied, an uncomfortable silence settled among the three of us. Amanda was the first to speak, her voice tight with controlled anger. That was humiliating. Jackson's expression remained neutral. It was necessary. The team needed clarity after months of confusion. "You could have managed it differently," she insisted. "Perhaps," he acknowledged, "but authenticity builds stronger teams than pretense. Your marketing and business development work is excellent, Amanda. That's where your genuine talent lies. There's no shame in that." She turned to me then, the facade finally dropping completely. "Are you happy now? You've made me look like a fraud in front of my entire team." "That wasn't my intention," I said truthfully. "I just wanted to do what I've always wanted to do, build something that helps people. This project can do that if we get it right." "And what about me?" she demanded. "What happens to my career after this?" Jackson intervened. "That largely depends on you, Miss Davis. You have 2 paths forward. You can continue fighting a battle you've already lost, or you can redirect your energy toward contributing your actual strengths to the project. One path leads to eventual termination, the other to potential redemption." Amanda's expression shifted through several emotions: anger, fear, calculation, and finally, reluctant acceptance. She gathered her things and stood to leave. "I need time to think," she said. After she left, Jackson turned to me. That went about as well as could be expected. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he replied, You do what you do best. Build the system. Lead the technical team. Prove that your work is as groundbreaking as I believe it is. And Amanda? Jackson sighed. Your sister has a choice to make. She's talented, but she took a shortcut that backfired. Whether she learns from this or doubles down on resentment is up to her. As I left the conference room that day, I felt both vindicated and uncertain. The team clearly respected my expertise, and the project was now on the right track. But the personal cost remained to be seen. My relationship with Amanda hung by a thread, and our father hadn't even entered the equation yet. Later that afternoon, as I was settling into my new office, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. We need to talk. Not here. Dinner tonight? I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. 7 p.m. The diner near my apartment. Whatever came next, it was time for honest conversation. After years of competition and resentment, maybe this crisis would finally force us to address the broken dynamics between us. I wasn't optimistic, but for the first time in years, I felt strong enough to face her as an equal. 6 months passed quickly. The fall chill gave way to winter snow, then spring rain, and now early summer sunshine streamed through the windows of my new corner office at Meridian Healthcare Solutions. On my desk sat a framed award, Healthcare Innovation of the Year, presented to the Access Care team just last week at the National Healthcare Technology Conference. The platform had launched 2 months ago, ahead of schedule and under budget. Already, over 20,000 patients had used the system to connect with affordable healthcare providers, many accessing specialized care for the first time in years. The success had exceeded even our most optimistic projections, and expansion plans were underway for additional markets. My phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Board meeting in 10. Bring the Q3 expansion numbers. I gathered my tablet and notes, pausing to straighten the other frame on my desk, a photograph of my mother Linda, smiling from her garden. You were right, Mom, I whispered. Some people build with their minds. As I walked through the development floor toward the executive elevator, team members greeted me with genuine respect. It had taken time to build trust, especially given the unusual circumstances of my arrival, but results spoke louder than rumors. The technical team now functioned like a well-oiled machine, with clear direction and purpose. Entering the boardroom, I nodded to Jackson and took my seat at the table. Across from me sat Amanda, reviewing her presentation notes. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave a small, professional nod. The road to this moment had been far from smooth. That dinner 6 months ago had started with tension and accusation, then gradually transformed into the first honest conversation we'd had as adults. Amanda had finally admitted to stealing my work out of desperation to advance her career, feeling constantly pressured to achieve more, faster, better. She'd also confessed to making those undermining calls to my previous employers, afraid I might overshadow her if given the chance to succeed. I've always been terrified of failing, she'd admitted that night. Dad put so much pressure on me to be perfect that I started cutting corners. Then I couldn't stop. Her confession hadn't immediately repaired our relationship, but it had opened a door. Under Jackson's carefully structured leadership plan, we'd been forced to work together while staying in our respective lanes, me handling technical development, Amanda managing marketing and business relationships. The arrangement had initially been awkward, but gradually evolved into a functional, professional relationship. The biggest surprise had come from our father. When the truth finally came out, his reaction had been unexpected. Rather than automatically defending Amanda as he always had, he'd been shaken to his core, forced to confront his role in creating the dynamic between his children. After weeks of stony silence, he'd asked to meet with me. I failed you, he'd said simply. I pushed your sister so hard she felt she had to cheat to meet my expectations, and I dismissed your talents because they didn't fit what I understood. I was wrong. Coming from Frank Davis, those 3 words, I was wrong, represented a seismic shift. Our relationship remained a work in progress, but he was trying, making efforts to understand my work and acknowledge my achievements. As for Amanda, her path to redemption had been difficult but real. After initially considering resignation, she'd instead committed to proving her legitimate value to the company. She'd enrolled in ethics training, voluntarily submitted to oversight of her work, and gradually rebuilt her reputation through genuine accomplishment. The marketing campaign she'd developed for Access Care had been brilliant, targeted, and ethically sound. She was still ambitious, still driven, but learning to channel those qualities without cutting corners. The board meeting proceeded efficiently, with each department reporting on quarterly results. When my turn came, I presented the technical performance metrics and expansion capabilities with confidence. The board members, once skeptical about the internal drama surrounding the project, now focused solely on its remarkable success. "Thank you, Technical Director Davis," the board chairman said when I finished. "Miss Davis, your marketing update?" Amanda smoothly transitioned to her presentation, outlining user adoption rates and brand positioning with impressive precision. Her legitimate skills were undeniable, and watching her work within her actual expertise, I felt an unexpected sense of pride in her growth. After the meeting, Jackson held me back as the others filed out. "The London Healthcare Consortium is interested in licensing Access Care for the UK market," he said. "I'd like you to lead the negotiations." "Me?" I asked, surprised. "Wouldn't Amanda be better suited for that?" "It's a technical adaptation primarily," he replied. "They need to understand the algorithm's flexibility for their regulatory framework. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "you've earned the recognition. This is your creation, Horace. Own it." As I left Jackson's office, Amanda was waiting in the hallway. "Heard about London," she said. "Congratulations. It's well-deserved." "Thanks," I replied, still adjusting to this new, more authentic relationship with my sister. "Listen," she continued, "Dad called earlier. He wants us both to come for dinner this weekend. Says he has something important to discuss." My hesitation must have shown on my face, because she quickly added, "It's different now, Horace. He's different. We're all different." And she was right. The events of 6 months ago had forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths and make difficult changes. None of us were the same people we had been at that promotion party. "I'll be there," I agreed. That weekend, as we sat around my father's dining table, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. Frank asked thoughtful questions about Access Care's impact, listening attentively to my answers without comparison or judgment. Amanda shared challenges she was facing with a new marketing initiative, openly admitting when she didn't have all the answers. After dinner, Frank cleared his throat nervously. "I have something to show you both," he said, leading us to his study. On his desk lay architectural plans. "I'm expanding Davis Construction," he explained, adding a technology division focused on smart home accessibility for seniors and people with disabilities. I looked at the plans in surprise. This was a significant departure from his traditional construction business. "It's inspired by what you created with Access Care, Horace," he continued, "using technology to solve accessibility problems. I'd like your input on the technical aspects, if you're willing. And Amanda, I could use your marketing expertise, but only if you both want to be involved. No pressure, no expectations." The offer represented more than a business opportunity. It was an acknowledgement of our individual strengths, an invitation to collaborate as equals. For the first time in my memory, our father was seeing us clearly and valuing us for who we actually were. Later that evening, as Amanda and I walked to our cars, she paused. "I never properly apologized," she said. "Not really. I'm sorry, Horace. For taking your work, for sabotaging your career, for years of putting you down to lift myself up. You didn't deserve any of it." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. "I'm not saying we should pretend it never happened," I replied, "but I think we're both finding better ways forward." She nodded. "I'm seeing a therapist, you know, trying to understand why I felt I had to cheat to succeed. It's helping." "I'm glad," I said, and meant it. Back at my apartment that night, I sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights. The journey from humiliation at Amanda's promotion party to leading a successful, expanding healthcare platform had been unpredictable and challenging. But the victories weren't just professional. The greatest achievement had been breaking free of the narrative my family had constructed about me and creating my own story based on integrity and genuine ability. The next morning, an email from Jackson appeared in my inbox with a news article link. Access Care had been featured in a major healthcare publication, highlighted as a breakthrough in addressing systemic accessibility issues. The final paragraph quoted an internal source. "The true innovation of Access Care is not just technological but ethical. It represents what happens when companies value integrity and expertise over shortcuts and quick wins." I smiled, recognizing Jackson's subtle hand in that messaging. He had taken a potentially disastrous situation and transformed it into both a successful product and a learning opportunity. His belief in second chances balanced with accountability had created space for genuine transformation. As I prepared for the London negotiations, I reflected on the lessons of the past 6 months. Success built on stolen work would have been hollow, haunted by the constant fear of discovery. But success earned through genuine effort, resilience, and ethical choices had a foundation that couldn't be shaken. The path forward wasn't perfect. My relationship with Amanda remained a work in progress. Our father was still learning how to relate to us without imposing his expectations. But for the first time, we were all moving in the right direction, seeing each other clearly and choosing integrity over appearances. In the end, that night at Amanda's promotion party had been both an ending and a beginning. The ending of a dysfunctional family dynamic built on comparison and resentment, and the beginning of something more authentic, more challenging, and ultimately more rewarding, relationships based on truth, hard-earned respect, and the courage to face our own flaws. What I'd learned through it all was that true success isn't measured by titles or accolades or even family approval. It's built on the foundation of knowing your own worth, standing by your principles, and having the courage to create your path even when others don't believe in you. Sometimes, the most important validation comes not from external sources but from within, from knowing that you've stayed true to yourself and your values, even when it would have been easier to compromise. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone else was against you? How did you find the strength to stay true to your values even when it would have been easier to stay silent? Please leave a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's perception of you. It's determined by the integrity of your choices and the courage of your convictions.